Hello everyone. Today we continue with the heavy-taste sci-fi horror movie Mimic 2. Although the plot continues from the first film, even if you haven't seen it, it won't affect your understanding. On a rainy night, Lincoln carried several large suitcases through the subway tunnel. As he walked through the alley, he wanted to hail a cab, but the driver didn't see him and sped past. When he stepped onto the wire mesh above the sewer, he faintly heard a strange sound rising from below. Not long after, a massive figure appeared before Lincoln. Those who watched the first film know it was not human, but a mutated cockroach that had killed countless people. Lincoln turned to run, but in the blink of an eye, the mutant was already upon him. Detective Klasky and his colleagues received the report and rushed to the scene immediately. They had seen many corpses before, but rarely one as horrifying as Lincoln's. His organs had been emptied, and his entire face had been peeled away. Elsewhere, Remi was giving her students a biology lesson at school. Her greatest passion was researching all kinds of insects, especially the ones with shells. Remi had no shortage of male admirers, but unfortunately, none of them were suitable, especially this burly man named Jason, who came to her door with flowers, intending to force his affection on her. After being rejected by Remi, he angrily kicked her door in. Before leaving, Jason even declared that he would never give up. That night, when Remi passed through an alley on her way home, she encountered the mutant, but the mutant only stood there. It did not harm Remi. The rain washed away the smell of blood, so Remi didn't notice the bloody corpse hanging from the cable overhead. It was Jason. He had been killed by the mutant. The next day, Remi had dinner with another pursuer, Philip. She spoke passionately, all about common knowledge of insects. Philip was absent-minded, clearly not interested in insects. Remi wasn't naive. She saw through Philip's intention and quickly made up an excuse to leave. Philip watched Remi's departing figure with resentment, and in the next second, an unexpected event quietly unfolded.
Hell.
Klasky comes to question Remi and learns from her that Lincoln was a smuggler, specializing in selling endangered species on the black market, with at least 200 species of endangered arthropods. From a professional standpoint, Remi and Lincoln were practically enemies. Remi was surprised. Surely the police didn't think she had killed Lincoln. His death had nothing to do with her. Klasky was only suspicious. He had no concrete evidence. After leaving Remi's home, Klasky went through a terrifying experience while passing through the alley. Just like Lincoln, Jason's organs and face were gone. Although Jason had ties to Remi, his death dispelled Klasky's suspicion of her, because a frail woman could never lift a man as large as Jason and throw him down from a height. To uncover the truth, Klasky often lingered near Remi's home. One night, he ran into several agents from the Department of Defense also conducting an investigation there. This puzzled him. How could the deaths of only 3 people in a small place alarm the Department of Defense? The agents knew who the culprit was, but they couldn't reveal the truth to Klasky yet. Using special equipment, the agents discovered secretions from the mutant nearby. When the beam of light shone on Remi's apartment building, they saw the walls covered with vine-like trails of sticky mucus, both spectacular and eerie. The police had no leads on the killer. However, the mutant's killing spree had only just begun. After school, when student Sal's parents didn't come to pick him up, Remi had to keep him by her side. Meanwhile, Lou, the security guard who also adored Remi, was outside playing on the parallel bars alone, unaware that danger was approaching. As it got late, Remi decided to take Sal home herself, but when they stepped out of the room, they were shocked to find the hallway completely blocked by desks and chairs. Remi touched it, and her hand came away covered in white slime. That's right, all of this was the mutant's work. Remi shouted for the principal's help. The principal rushed over after hearing her. He thought it was a student prank and did not sense anything wrong. He manually moves the desks and chairs while making inappropriate remarks to Remi. At that moment, the mutant suddenly appeared and killed the principal. Seeing this, Remi grabbed Sal and bolts. They fled to the other end of the hallway and then hid inside a room piled with miscellaneous items. The wine bottles scattered on the floor immediately made Remi tense up. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. Hiding here was not a bad person, but a teenager named Nikki who had dropped out of school early and had always been obsessed with Remi. Sal seemed to know Nikki well and said he was hiding here to escape his father. Remi tells them to watch the hallway while she uses her camera to see if the mutant is outside. Once they got to a safe spot, Nikki asked in confusion, "What on earth is going on? What's chasing us?" Remi asked him if he remembered a few years ago when there was an infectious disease spread by cockroaches that specifically harmed children. Back then, entomologist Susan created a new insect species called Judas to wipe out those cockroaches. But unexpectedly, the cockroaches were not completely wiped out. Some even mutated and evolved into their only natural enemy, Humans. Sal looked at the photo and thought the mutant looked a lot like Lou. Nikki also felt that the face in the photo was Lou. Remi insisted that was impossible, because mutants could not evolve specific human faces. At that moment, Nikki accidentally found a suitcase under the water pipe, and the tag on it had Lincoln's name written on it. Curious, Nikki wanted to open it, but Remi sharply stopped him. Yet the next second, the suitcase opened by itself. Nikki touched it and found it was full of soil, nothing too strange. However, something seemed to be wriggling inside the soil. Remi told Nikki to close it quickly, but whatever was inside was trying to get out. In their panic, Sal also came to help. During the struggle, a juvenile mutant suddenly crawled onto Sal's back. Remi reacted quickly, threw it to the ground, and crushed it with one stomp. Before one crisis could pass, another began. More and more insects crawled out of the suitcase, some even crawling onto their bodies. Fortunately, they made it through without injury. Even though they overcame the danger, quite a few insects still slipped away in the chaos. Hiding here was not a long-term solution. Remi suggested they escape to the rooftop and then call the police. Young and impulsive, Nikki wants to use an iron bar he found to smash the bugs to pieces. Hearing this, Remi urged him to abandon that reckless thought. The mutant's outer shell was extremely hard. It could not be beaten to death, and the more you provoked it, the more vicious it would become. Facing it head-on would only lead to certain death. Remi told Nikki that the mutant's genes might be a patchwork of different insects, but at its core it was still a cockroach, so its behavior was basically the same as cockroaches. Cockroaches avoid light, prefer narrow enclosed spaces, have sensors, and can detect even the faintest airflow. In other words, the open rooftop would be safer than a cluttered space with corners everywhere. Walking would be safer than running, and of all the cockroaches' traits, what concerned Remi the most was their powerful ability to learn. They could draw lessons from their mistakes. Some foolish humans couldn't even compare to cockroaches in this respect. Before leaving, Remi carefully used her camera to check outside the door. Only when she confirmed no mutant was there did she dare to move further. She reminded Nikki and Sal again, walk down the center of the hallway, keep your movements slow, breathe lightly, and try not to sweat, because sweat could also attract cockroaches. They safely reached the hallway blocked by desks and chairs, but moving all of them would take a lot of time. Yet the time left for them was already running out.
Hold it up with this! Go!
After Nikki and Sal escaped, Remi picked up the camera that had fallen on the ground, wanting to take more pictures. When the mutant came right in front of her, she remained perfectly still, only taking photo after photo. The moment of miracle arrived. The mutant did not harm Remi. Instead, it reached out its hand. But before the mutant could touch Remi's hand, gunfire suddenly rang out. It was Klasky. The mutant's white secretions sprayed all over him. Seeing the mutant for the first time, Klasky could hardly believe his eyes. This can't be human. What on earth is this thing? The mutant was not afraid of bullets and still stood strong. This was not the time for explanations. As the mutant charged at them, their group quickly hid in the principal's office. To prevent the mutant from breaking in, they turned on all the desk lamps in the room and placed them at the door. Klasky wanted to call for reinforcements, but Remi said ordinary people could not deal with the mutant. She immediately contacted the Disease Control Center and reported that their location now had a fully grown Judas cockroach and countless larvae. If no solution came soon, the entire school would become a mutant nest. After getting the basic information, the person on the line tells them to keep the phone line open. Rescue teams will head there at top speed. Klasky didn't want to sit and wait for death. He tore the steel blade off the paper cutter, intending to chop off the mutant's head. Remi warned him not to be naive. Unless the mutant was molting, it was impossible even to scratch its shell. Even if you cut off the head of a giant mutant cockroach, it would not die immediately. Instead, it would starve to death slowly after 9 days. Before long, the sound of the mutant rustling came from nearby. This time it was coming from inside the walls. Klasky was baffled. How could something that big squeeze inside? Rescue would still take several hours to arrive, but the current situation could never hold that long. The mutant could break through the wall at any moment. Remi told the others to leave first. The one the mutant was after was her. As long as she didn't provoke it, there should not be a big problem. Nikki was unwilling to let Remi take the risk. Since the mutant tracked by scent, if they placed something carrying Remi's scent at the spot where she had been, wouldn't that distract the mutant's attention? Then they could seize the chance to escape. Whether it would work or not, they would only know by trying. Klasky took Sal and left first, while Nikki stayed to assist Remi. Everything went according to plan. Remi nailed her removed clothes and pants to the wall. Just as expected, the mutant quickly came through the wall to the spot behind the clothes. Just as Remi and Nikki were preparing to retreat safely, the phone suddenly rang. Provoked, the mutant instantly burst out. Meanwhile, Klasky and Sal had already reached the entrance safely. Only the scene outside shocked them to the core. Armed forces from the Department of Defense had arrived ahead of the Disease Control Center and already sealed off the entire school building. Klasky begged them to save the people, saying there were still 2 trapped in the principal's office, but they replied that the phone inside had not been answered, so they were certain no one was there, at least no one alive. Klasky asked the commander to give him 5 minutes to go back and save them, but was flatly refused. In order to kill the mutant completely, they decided to release poison gas into the school building. If there were still survivors inside, they would simply be considered sacrifices for the greater good. Klasky did not give up. While the soldiers were distracted, he stole the pistol from one soldier's belt and rushed back into the school. At the same time, Remi finally figured out why the mutant had killed Lou and Jason. During their escape, the mutant stabbed Remi's body. In biology class, Remi had once said that after a male insect pierces the female's body, if the female does not die, reproduction can occur. Just as the mutant was about to kill Nikki, his rival in love, Klasky arrived in time, and Nikki seized the chance to escape. But even after being shot in the head, the mutant did not die. Klasky was no match, and just as he was about to be killed, the soldiers flooded in. The mutant was clever. Sensing the disadvantage, it dragged Remi away from the scene. When the soldiers came out, Klasky was nowhere to be seen. From the conversation between the soldiers and the commander, it became clear that Klasky had gone back once again to save someone. Remi woke up in the mutant's nest. Her stomach wound was covered in disgusting mucus. Strangely, the pain from the wound seemed to have completely disappeared. Soon, the poison gas poured in. In her haze, Remi saw a figure. It looked like Klasky, but also not quite. In the end, it was Klasky who carried the unconscious Remi out. When Remi woke again, she was already lying on a hospital bed. There was no internal bleeding, no infection. It was nothing short of a medical miracle. Before falling unconscious, she had felt something wriggling inside her stomach. The doctor told her not to worry. Everything had been removed. The doctor only knew they were some kind of insect larvae, but he did not know exactly what, because as soon as the eggs were taken out, they were seized by the Department of Defense. The doctor told Remi it was those insects that saved her life. The principle was somewhat similar to maggots. In ancient times, doctors used them to eat away and clean necrotic or infected tissue. These remarkable little insects cleaned her body like vacuum cleaners, and at the same time secreted mucin-like substances to help stop the bleeding. However, upon learning the truth, Remi could not smile. Back at the school, the police entered the building to confirm whether the mutant was dead. Soon after, they discovered another corpse. It turned out to be Klasky. So here came the question: who was the Klasky that had carried Remi out? By this time, Remi had already been discharged and returned to her apartment. On the bed, Lincoln's suitcase still haunted her with fear, while the larvae inside had long since escaped. Remember, when you see one cockroach in your home, it means there are already thousands hidden where you cannot see. At that moment, the sudden knocking at the door interrupted Remi's thoughts. No one could have expected. In the end, the mutant would die because of its obsession with love. The film was released in 2001, 4 years after the first. Compared with the first film, the sequel's story was much simpler. Even the giant cockroaches on screen had been reduced to just one. Rather than the fear brought by visual effects, this installment focused more on psychological fear. Humans becoming mating targets for giant mutant cockroaches with stomachs filled with eggs. Just thinking about it feels like the sky collapsing. All right, that is the end of today's story. See you next time.